The X Zone Radio Show is heard on radio broadcast affiliates worldwide, including
AM 580 CFRA in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada.
WPUL AM 1590 in Daytona Beach, Florida.
KOHI AM 1610 in St. Helens, Oregon.
KHRO AM 1150 in El Paso, Texas. And for more information on becoming a professional broadcast affiliate of the X Zone Radio Show, visit
www.xzbn.net
or call toll-free worldwide
1-800-610-7035.
The X Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Well, she seemed alright by dawn's early light, though she looked a little worried and weak. She tried to pretend he wasn't drinking again, but Daddy left the proof on her cheek. And I was only 8 years old that summer, and I always seemed to be in the way. So I took myself down to the fair in town on Independence Day. Well, word gets around in a small, small town. They said he was a dangerous man, but Mama was proud and she stood her ground. She knew she was on the losing end. Some folks whispered.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, coming to you from our studio in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, telephone number 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is Mary Webb, and we're going to be talking about Mary's book, The Summer of Superheroes and the Making of Iron Boy. Now, Mary is a former newspaper reporter and current high school English teacher who lives in Patterson, Louisiana. Mary Webb has written for the San Antonio Express News, the New Orleans Times, the Monroe LA News Star, and other newspapers. Currently, she teaches English and speech at Westgate High School in Iberia Parish. Previously, she taught English at Patterson High School in St. Mary Parish, as well as in Morgan City, Louisiana, and Dallas, Texas. She lives in Patterson, Louisiana, with her husband, Corwin, and their 2 children. Now, The Summer of Superheroes and the Making of Iron Boy is her first published novel. Mary is a graduate of Xavier University of Louisiana, where she received a Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communication and a concentration in print journalism. Her website is www.createspace.com/3458326. And Mary Webb, welcome to the X Zone.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you, Mary. What was your inspiration for writing The Summer of Superheroes and the Making of Iron Boy?
Well, I just felt like my son had such a phenomenal story that needed to be told.
Mm-hmm.
He's the world's first ever cord and placenta blood transplant recipient. All of this from our daughter, who was an unexpected pregnancy. We just have miracles on top of miracles and blessings on top of blessings that occurred. And I felt like his story was so phenomenal, I had to get it out there. Additionally, I felt that his story is a story that, when I first started writing it, I felt like it would be something that parents with kids who have life-threatening illnesses would benefit from. But really, it's a story of hope that anyone who needs the message of hope would benefit from.
Tell me, do you believe in miracles?
I do now.
All right.
If I hadn't before, I do now.
All right, Mary, you and I have to take a 2-minute commercial break. Please stand by. Exo Nation, a story of miracles this hour with our very special guest, Mary Webb. Mary is the author of The Summer of Superheroes and The Making of Iron Boy. Mary and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break in 2 minutes as the X Zone is live from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Once again, our contact information, 1-800-610-7035 is toll free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. I'll be back in 2 minutes with Mary Webb. Don't go away.
Another summer day has come and gone away from Paris or Rome, but I wanna go home. Maybe surrounded by a million people, I still feel all alone. Just wanna go home. Oh, I miss you, you know. And I've been keeping all the letters that I wrote to you, each one a line or two. I'm fine, baby, how are you?
Mary Webb is our special guest. We're going to be talking about Mary's book entitled The Summer of Superheroes and the Making of Iron Boy. Mary, I was wondering if you could take us back to the beginning and tell us more about your son and the challenges that you and your family faced and that miracle, that first miracle that came to you.
I guess the first challenge we faced was trying to find out what was wrong with Quentin. When we moved back from Dallas, he started to have a very significant eye swelling, and we hadn't gotten our furniture back, and I thought maybe he was sleeping in his sleeping bag and he was allergic to the carpet. And then that grew into several different aches and pains. We spent the whole summer going from doctor to doctor, orthopedic surgeon, ophthalmologist, pediatric ophthalmologist, just trying to find out what was wrong with him. And finally, one doctor took a significant look at him, and she ran a bunch of blood tests, and we was able to determine what it was. So that was our first challenge. It was sort of easy going after that because he went into remission about 30 days after he was diagnosed, and I thought that was the end of cancer for us. A week later, we discovered that he was in the highest bracket for the disease to return, and he had to go through the bone marrow transplant procedure. Because if you relapse, you only have about a 35% chance of surviving at that point. Luckily for us, our daughter, we were unexpectedly pregnant. We learned we were pregnant about 3 months before Quentin was diagnosed, and the first thing they told us was, it's good that you're pregnant. Because the number one cure for leukemia is stem cell transplant. He went through the transplant in March of 2008 after we found out that Jory was a perfect match. Doctors say for us to have a sibling already on the way match and matches perfectly as she did is like the equivalent of winning the lottery.
Wow.
And that's how I feel about it. The transplant procedure was kind of rough, where chemotherapy, even though he was having the harshest form of the drug served to him, he kind of, went through that easy sailing. But the transplant was a bit tricky. It was a very fragile procedure.
Now, how old was your son when he went through all this?
He was 4 when he was diagnosed, and he was 5 when he was transplanted. He's 7 now, and it's like he was never sick.
When you learned that your son had leukemia, what was your immediate reaction?
I have to say my immediate reaction was relief, just because we finally found out what was wrong. But right after that, my reaction was, oh my God, it's cancer. And would I lose him? Was he going to die?
Tell us a little bit about Quentin's transplant.
The transplant, it was almost anticlimactic leading up to it. It ended up being like about a 20-minute procedure. When I looked at the stem cells, I say, when I recall, it looked like it was the color of pink lemonade, and it had the consistency of a gel. And Quentin pretty much pulled the covers over his head and slept through the whole procedure. He got cells in about 28 days, which is way ahead of the curve in terms of what transplant should be. But he had some rough days making it back from that zero blood count and just getting his strength back. And he had almost 20 different medications that he was taking around the clock, including high blood pressure. Like I said, it was a very fragile procedure. But once he turned the curve, once he turned that corner, he just took off from there. And I really give the credit to the placenta blood, because most people, all other people, have only done stem cells from umbilical cord.
Tell me, how familiar were you with stem cell transplants before the procedure?
I have to say I wasn't really. What I heard in the media was very negative, and it really centered around the debate about the embryonic cells. I consider myself to be pretty educated, but I really have to say I was not that savvy when it came to what stem cell transplant, the benefits were.
You learned a lot in a hurry.
I learned a lot. I learned on the job, basically.
Yeah. Tell me, what would you tell listeners around the world about stem cell research after you and your family's ordeal?
I would say it is such an untapped wealth of benefits. We got information in the mail a couple of days ago about cancer insurance, and I'm like, what better insurance for cancer is there than to have your baby's cord blood banked, or to look into, or for us to, as Americans, we need to really be on the ball with getting stem cell research promoted. It's not negative. There are more than 100 things that they can do with stem cells, and I'm sure that number is going to grow. They're talking about curing blindness, and I can't imagine why it's so under the radar.
I was wondering if you might have any idea why so many people are dead against stem cell research, and what would you like to tell these people?
Part of it, I believe, is that they're thinking that that scientists are playing God, and I really don't see it as such. I see it as something God has given us. It's like anything else, and it's what we choose to do with it. Sure, there are probably some negative things that can be done with it, but that can be said about any other medical procedure, and I don't see them, closing the door on that. I say that we need to. What I would tell people is that we need to make a savvy, a conscious, an educated decision about what's going to happen with stem cells before we just, toss it out the window. And really, I think it hasn't been researched and it hasn't been promoted as well as it should be.
People can say the same thing about other organ transplants, including the heart, and yet they don't. They herald it as a great medical victory.
Exactly.
And I think they should do the very same with stem cell research.
Exactly. That's my exact point. I'm talking about my son who's perfectly healthy, before this, and is perfectly healthy now since it, And that would have been, we're 3 years out from his diagnosis, and I could very well be standing here talking to you as a parent of a deceased child if it were not for stem cells. And I can't understand why we would ignore that factor. And you're absolutely right about we should treat it as any other transplant. It's a life-saving gesture.
That's right.
Not anything to harm you.
There are times when I think the people who have the ability to make what are supposed to be educated decisions need to give their heads a shake, and this is one of those times.
Exactly. I say the same thing, being an educator. We have people who have never been in the classroom making decisions about classrooms. And we have people who have never stood in my shoes making decisions about that affect people who have stood in my shoes.
Well, I am very happy for you and your family that everything is fine with Quentin. And I agree with stem cell research. I agree that if we can help if we can cure, if we can save, that's what we're supposed to do as human beings.
Yes, it is. We're trying to prolong life, and we do it in every other arena. We eat better. We try to eat better. There are, all these research done on how to prolong life. This is one. This is a no-brainer.
Or is it because stem cell research will not fill the pockets of the greedy?
I don't see how it's going to take away from the pockets of the greedy either.
For example,
how is death? Whose pockets are going to be fattened by that? I mean, we all have to go at some point. So if it's the morticians,
no. What I was saying, Mary, is that so many times we see the medical community working hand in hand with the pharmaceutical industry, and stem cell is basically apart from the pharmaceutical industry, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. And you know what? And maybe that's something that needs to be investigated, because should the medical community be that, should be held in hands with the pharmaceutical community, or should they be promoting life in their patients?
I will vote for promoting life in their patients.
So will I. Any day. And, as far as the pharmaceutical companies are concerned, like I said, Quentin, he took about 20 different medications after the transplant. So, there's your, your slice of the pie.
Exactly. So is Quentin fully recovered?
He's fully recovered. Following a stem cell transplant and the placenta blood transplant, they have a curve of about 2 years, which he passed that threshold in March of this year, where, if you're still alive, you're pretty much going to be alive, or, it's not going to be taken out by leukemia at this point.
So I believe Quentin is 7 years old now?
Yes, he's 7.
And does he have any recall about the entire event, or is he just a happy little 7-year-old who's enjoying life?
Well, he recalls it adequately. We did not sugarcoat anything for Quentin, and he's a very intelligent boy. He, followed his treatment process. Whenever the doctors talked to us, they basically talked to him as well. He knows that joy was his life-saving gift. I'm sure he doesn't understand all of the science of what happened, but he, does understand that he had a significant illness and that he pulled through.
What about your daughter?
No, I'm waiting for her to lord it over him when she's old enough to know that she was. I can see how that's going to develop already.
Oh, my
goodness.
Clean
my room. I saved your life.
Oh, yeah. That's a wonderful story. You and I have to take a commercial break. Mary, please stand by. And thank you for sharing this story. It's a story that has to be heard, and we're so happy that you're sharing it with us here on the X Zone.
I'm happy to have the forum.
You and I will be back on the other side of the news. Please stand by. X Zone Nation, Mary Webb is our special guest. She's the author of The Summer of Superheroes and the Making of Iron Boy. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name's Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
I hear the drums echoing tonight, and she hears only whispers of some quiet conversation. She's coming in 12:30 flight. Moonlit wings reflect the stars that guide me towards salvation. I stopped an old man along the way, hoping to find some old forgotten words or ancient man.
The shadow of your smile.
You're listening to the X Zone Radio Show, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio,
Euro High Definition Radio,
and Star Cable. Our toll-free telephone number worldwide is 1-800-610-7035.
Our email address, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com.
On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com.
And our website,
www www.xzoneradiotv.com.
A wistful little star was far too high.
Mary Webb is my special guest. We're talking about Mary's new book entitled The Summer of Superheroes and the Making of Iron Boy. Her website is www.createspace.com/3458392. Mary, great being with us, and thank you very much for sharing this wonderful story.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me, what were the reasons for writing your book, The Summer of Superheroes and the Making of Iron Boy?
One, I just felt like Quentin's story. I mean, the way things happen for us, a 5 to 7 year chemotherapy treatment phase brought down to just 18 months. Him being the first person in the world to receive cord and placenta blood, all from an unexpected pregnancy, our daughter, who matched him perfectly. I just felt, I mean, that's just too good. That's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of things that happen to us, the blessings. I felt like I had to get his story out there. Second, when we first brought Quentin in, there were so many people who, gave us love and encouragement, who had been through it, to let us know it would be okay. And I want to be that same encouragement to people who are in shoes similar to what we're in. But really, I just, people who have read the story have said that they've been inspired by it, even people who knew what was going on. And I really do think it's a message of hope that will inspire people no matter what they're going through, but definitely for people who are in our shoes.
Did Quentin's event bring your family closer together?
It really did. Like I said, my husband and I had been living in Dallas, and luckily we moved back, and we were just so, our family just, we could not have done it without the love and support of our family. I'm glad we moved back to Louisiana. But really, I feel like my husband and I, we bonded because we're talking about a child here, okay? It was a drain on us, I have to say, but really and truthfully, we kind of just put our heads together and said, no matter what, we're fighting for Quentin. We're fighting for Quentin. Everything else is, secondary. Everything else is, small piece to us.
What's the story behind the title of the book?
Oh, the title, it's unique in that the summer that Quentin was transplanted, there were all these superhero movies out, like The Dark Knight, Iron Man, Speed Racer, Incredible Hulk, and I felt like he fit in with that. But then one of my friends, Adrienne Lott, who is a cancer survivor herself, she sent Quentin an action hero figurine of Iron Man. I remember her card saying an Iron Man for an Iron Boy. And that just spoke volumes with me because Quentin was so resilient. not just through the transplant, but all through the entire ordeal. And that, like I said, it just spoke volumes to me. And I was like, he is a superhero, and it was like a superhero was created, and Iron Boy was the perfect title for him. So that's the story behind the title. Some people say it's too long, but I think it's just perfect to tell, what our story is.
How did your faith play into the family dynamics as this entire event from chemo, from leukemia to stem cell research that played in, and then the unexpected announcement that you were going to have a little girl or a little child, and you were given what I believe you consider to be a miracle.
Yes, faith was my rock. People told me throughout the process that I was a form of encouragement to them, the way I handled myself and the way I was very positive. Basically, when Quinn was diagnosed, when we were driving from Patterson to New Orleans to take in the children, and I already in my heart knew it's leukemia, I, had already buried Quentin in my head, okay? And I could see myself, sprawled out on my bed, with another child to raise. And I was like, this, without the will to live. And it just was too grim of an outlook for me. And it's like I just decided I'm just going to jump back on base, and I'm going to believe that everything is going to be okay. I'm going to believe that God has given me this second child after I said I'd never have another child. Quinn was enough for us. I'm going to believe that God is not going to be cruel enough to give me this child and not be, not work out for me. Okay. And then when he was diagnosed, when he was determined that he was in the highest bracket for it to return, and they said they were going to do the transplant, again, I'm just thinking that's fine because it's going to work. When they called to tell us that she was a match, I calmly went to the back and I told my husband. He broke out crying, and I'm kind of like, I already knew it was going to happen. I had chosen to believe it was going to happen because, like I said, I just didn't feel like God would be cruel enough to give us another child and at the expense of our first child. So, yeah, faith was my rock.
What was the hardest part for the family through this entire nightmare?
I would have to say the hardest days were the night he was diagnosed because it's like a slap in the face. My family met us at the hospital. They came down. They were right down the street from the hospital at my future sister-in-law's wedding shower, bridal shower. She was getting married to my brother at the end of the week, and they came and they met us there. And it was just a shock, for them. But the second hardest day probably was when Quentin had seizures and he had to be airlifted and from Patterson and brought to Children's. My mom always says, she walked in. Well, I could see it in my mom's face when she walked in and saw, what Quentin looked like, that he was a goner. I thought he was having a stroke that morning. Thank God it wasn't. It was seizures. But I would say those, that when he was in the PICU, the pediatric intensive care unit for that ordeal, it was a little surreal because, he, even like with the chemotherapy and even doing transplant, Quentin didn't have many low days. He didn't have many days where he was sick, but this particular ordeal, he was really out of it. He was really not himself. And so I would say that those were the scariest moments.
I've spoken to many authors over the years, and there's always one part of the book that they found the hardest to write. No matter what genre, whether it's humor, whether it's fiction, whether it's a memoir. What was the hardest chapter for you to write in your book?
I wouldn't say it was a chapter, but I would say it's the times where I had to write about someone else who lost their battle. The book is dedicated to 3 individuals, Grant Hebert, Randy, and Carl. And when I write about their deaths, that's the hardest part because I wanted all of us to win. And I almost feel a sense of guilt that we had all these, that we had what I consider a fairy tale ending for a cancer diagnosis where they did not. And so I think the hardest times is when I don't want to seem like, I almost feel like I'm gloating and I'm not. But that's the hardest part, when I realized that we were incredibly, incredibly lucky, and some people were not.
Now, who were these other people that you were just talking about?
They were people we just kind of, Randy was
I see.
a little boy. He was 2 when he passed. He had been on the oncology floor the majority of his life. I'm pretty much from birth to the time he passed. Quentin always joked that was Jory's boyfriend. Carl was a fellow transplant recipient. He went into transplant at the same time that Quentin went in. And he had said that he was afraid of having a transplant. But when he discovered that Quentin was having one, Quentin was, younger than he was. He said, "Quentin, if little Quentin can do it, so can I." And Grant, he also was transplanted. His family lives in the Patterson area as I do, and she's a teacher. And I got to know her through his need for blood, and he was transplanted successfully, but his kidney was poisoned by and that's why I say it's a very fragile procedure. One of the medications actually poisoned his kidney. And so these are people that we, when you get on the oncology floor, you bond with these people because they're going through what you're going through. You see them every time you're there, and it was a blow to lose them.
As a teacher, has the event with Quentin changed the way that you look at your students?
It has. Quentin is the reason why I teach. I was a former journalist, and I really felt like I had been being called to teach, but kind of ignored it. And then I started thinking, after he was born, I'm going to want somebody to do for my child what I won't even do for someone else's. So I've always, looked at the kids as if they were an extension of my family, but more so after Quentin was sick. One, because of the love that they gave me. I mean, they knew when things were going on. They tried to make my day a little bit easier. But really just, I felt like I just became more of a compassionate person because I guess I was more aware that life is, not forever. I think, Quentin's ordeal has made me a better teacher, a better wife, a better mother, a better person. And if I had to take anything from cancer, I think that's what I would take from it.
How about Quentin? How is he coping with everything? Is he just a happy little 7-year-old?
He is. He, even when he was going through what he was going through, I knew he understood that he was sick. I'm fortunate that he was only 4 when it happened because I don't think it ever occurred to him that he could die. And so I took my cues from him. He was always upbeat. Yes, he had some low days. Yes, he had some days where he was aggravated or sick. But for the most part, he just was remarkable. And he continues to be. He'll ask questions about it. You remember when I was sick and I didn't have any hair? I had my mask on. Even when he had like this funky, what I call a mask that like you would wear if you had if you were working with asbestos that he would wear in public. And even though people would point, he didn't let that bother him. I mean, it just he just went with the flow. He really made things easier for us. And he's like he is such a charming individual. He is so fun-loving and is so spirit-filled. And if any life had to be saved, I'm so glad that it was his.
And how is your husband?
We finished up the baseball. This is Quentin's first year playing organized sports. And where we would be sitting in the stands, normally I think if this hadn't happened, my husband would be upset if Quentin hadn't hit the ball or if he didn't hit it further enough. We were cracking our sides when Quentin hit the ball and he ran to third base instead of first, even when he continued to do that because we were just happy to have him. I think my husband has bonded so much more with Quentin. He spent a lot of the days in the hospital with Quentin doing the transplant. And I think it changed him as a person. Not just me, it changed him as a person, too.
If there was one thing, one message that you would like to share with the listening audience around the world right now, what would that be?
I would say that cancer is not or does not have to be a death sentence. Certainly it will be for some people, but it's not an automatic stamp on your death certificate if you have cancer. You can beat this. Research, there's so much research that has been done with leukemia, in particular, but cancer in general. And I just, I would like them to know we're living proof. I can still remember July 12th, 2007, initially thinking that, Quentin wouldn't be around, and here he is.
Mm-hmm.
Cancer does not mean to give up on life.
Mary, stand by. You and I have to take our final break. Exo Nation, Mary Webb is our special guest. She's the author of The Summer of Superheroes and the Making of Iron Boy. Here's her website, www.createspace.com/3458326. That's www.createspace.com/3458326. Mary and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Welcome back, Exo Nation. Mary Webb is our special guest. The name of her book is The Summer of Superheroes and the Making of Iron Boy, which is available, I believe, at Amazon.com. Now, Mary, you were telling me during the commercial break that you're going to be giving back to the people who helped you with the sale of this book.
Exactly. The book is available at Amazon.com and createspace.com/3458326. And a portion of the proceeds will benefit Children's Hospital in New Orleans, as well as the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and the JL Foundation. These are organizations that support us financially, and we could not have done it without them. Children's Hospital is a phenomenal facility from top to bottom. I'm talking about people as high up as the surgeons, downtown to the people who cleaned our rooms. Everybody nurtured us, and we wouldn't be here without them. And then Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and the JL Foundation, like I said, were organizations, among some others, who supported us financially. They made us able to focus on Quentin's health and not on the financial. What could have been a financial nightmare for us.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes.
And it's so nice knowing that there are organizations out there who realize that at a time of a crisis in a family of this magnitude, the family needs to be able to pull together without having to have extra worry. And to hear that there are organizations that were there to help you, I just think that it proves that this world of ours is on the right track. We just have to keep going in that circle.
I do believe that. And that's part of, why I wrote the book. I feel like I want to be the same sense of encouragement and the same sense of support that was given to us. That's what helped to pull us through. And I want to pull some other people who are coming behind us through the same loop.
Tell me, do you have plans to write another book?
People are asking for the sequel. Those who have read the book are asking for the sequel for my kids, who I've described as being the Marley of kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think Jory's going to want her lion's share of the attention as well. So maybe.
All right. I'd like you to do me one more thing. I'd like you to once again tell the listeners where they can get a copy of your book.
The book is available at Amazon.com or at www.createspace.com/345-8326.
I'd like you to give my very best to Quentin, your daughter,
I will.
your husband, and thank you for being an inspiration, letting others know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, there is hope, and there are those people and organizations that will be there with you in your time of need.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to be able to share that message with those who may be in need of it.
It's my great pleasure. Mary, take care of yourself. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Mary
you.
Webb has been my guest this hour, Exonation. www.createspace.com/3458326, and her book that she wrote, The Summer of Superheroes and the Making of Iron Boy, is available on Amazon.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name's Rob McConnell. Don't go away.